Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Pewaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
This is Capital Notes from Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Maayan Silver, speaking with J.R. Ross, editor of WizPolitics.com. Hi, J.R. Thanks for joining me.
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's state convention season again. The Wisconsin Democratic Convention was this weekend. The Wisconsin GOP held their convention in mid-May. Can you fill us in on the party's agendas this midterm election year?
Well, these are basically kind of rallying opportunities for the base. So the people who stuff envelopes, who make phone calls, who volunteer on campaigns, those are people who are showing up to listen to these speeches and give up a weekend in beautiful weather to sit in a dark room as people go on about their priorities. But so it's, that opportunity to kind of like, look, hey, the primaries are around the corner for Democrats seeking the governor's office. The election in November is not far after that. It's time to re-energize and get fired up about things and talk about their priorities. And it's clear that when the priorities is making life more affordable, the question is going to be who has the better plan or the one that resonates the most with voters in Wisconsin come November.
And, you were talking about big races. Wisconsin's legislature has been under conservative control since 2011. After, that's when Republicans met in secret after the 2010 census. They drafted maps that would give them the edge. Since then, there's been a GOP-led governor's office under Scott Walker, and then a split government under Democrat Tony Evers, who won in 2018. Now we have new maps that will give Democrats a better chance. What's at stake in this midterm election year when talking about control of the Wisconsin legislature?
Well, if there's a trifecta for Democrats, they can enact a string of policies they've been stymied under Governor Evers. I mean, there are a host of ideas from legalizing recreational marijuana to overhauling a tax break for manufacturing and agriculture to, family paid family leave. It just goes on and on and on. And one of the big things is that there is a Democratic trifecta is they would draw a new map. So in Wisconsin, you can have a map drawn by the legislature, signed by the governor, once a decade. But the maps we have right now were picked by the state Supreme Court in 2022. So we still have an opportunity, even though the decade's almost over, or will be almost over by come 2028, there would be an opportunity to draw a new map. There are obviously lawsuits pending before the state Supreme Court on that very topic. But if you have Democrats have the opportunity, they would draw a map that would at least make it a 4-4 split rather than 6-2 for Republicans, and maybe find a way for a 5-3 or 6-2 map for Democrats. The opportunity, at least. There are no guarantees in politics, right? But that'd be a big deal. That would definitely influence nationally control for the House in 2028.
Yeah, when you talk about those splits, you were talking about the congressional maps, right?
Yep, yeah. Right now, 6-2. There's one swing seat in western Wisconsin that isn't really swingy sometimes. President Trump won it by like 5 points or so in 24, but Derek Van Norden ran behind the president in 24, and he's a target. The first district in southeastern Wisconsin can be competitive, the right candidate, right environment, but Brian Stile has done a very good job running at the top of the ticket. So right now, there's not really a path for Democrats to get to a 50-50 map in Wisconsin, barring an amazing electorate, barring incredible resources and great candidates. It's not on the cards, but if you have a chance to draw that map, they could create an opportunity to pick up a couple seats at least in 2028.
And June 1st was the filing deadline for candidates before the, it's the August 11th partisan primary. And then after that is the November 3rd general election. I'd like to zero in again on those state legislative races, starting with the state Senate. The current balance there is 18 Republicans and 15 Democrats. You've said in the past that there are 4 seats at play for Democrats to get the majority. One's currently held by a Democrat and 3 are held by Republicans. What do we know about these primaries to watch now that those signatures are in?
So in those 4 seats, there's a primary in the 17th Senate District. That's one held by Howard Markline, Republican from Spring Green, co-chair of the Joint Finance Committee. Jenna Jacobson's a Democrat in the Assembly from Oregon. She has got the Senate Democratic leadership behind her, but she still faces 2 opponents in the primary for the nomination. So she's got a little work ahead of her to nail that down. You'll likely see a lot of groups weighing on her behalf to help her because she's kind of the favored candidate. But watch that primary there. The rest of them, it's pretty straightforward what's going to happen. We're going to have in western Wisconsin with Jeff Smith, a Democrat, the only one who's really in a targeted seat in the Democratic caucus. Michelle Skinner ran for the Assembly in 2024. An Eau Claire area seat, lost by a few points to Jody Emerson. During that campaign, she got knocked because opponents accused her of spending too much of her time in the winter down south. And she drove around the district in campaign season in a campaign car that had Georgia license plates on it. So it kind of sent a message she wasn't really a full-time resident of the district. Then you go over to southeastern Wisconsin, 2 seats at play there. You have Mike Roberts, who's got a medical profession background. On the Republican side, running for the open seat was held by a Republican, and Robin Vining, a state representative, running on the Democratic side. That is probably the hardest seat to defend for Republicans of the 3. Kamala Harris won that by like 6 percentage points in 2024. Then you swing over to a Racine area seat held by Van Wangard. Pretty much a 50-50 seat. Now, Harris did take more votes than Trump out of that district in 24, but that one's a toss-up as well. So that's your map. Democrats have to win any 3. If they protect Jeff Smith and pick up 2, they've got the majority. If they lose Jeff Smith, they have to win the other 3 to get to 17 votes. So that's the whole ballgame right there in those 4.
This is Capital Notes. I'm Maayan Silver, speaking with J.R. Ross of WizPolitics.com. Okay, so we just touched upon the state Senate. What about in the Assembly? There are 99 representatives there, and the current balance is 54 Republicans to 45 Democrats. Can you break down the races to watch?
Yeah, I mean, there are 5 seats that Republicans hold right now that Kamala Harris took more votes than Donald Trump in 2024. The 53rd Assembly District in the Neenah Menasha area, Republican Dean Cofford is retiring, not seeking re-election, so that makes that seat harder to hold for Republicans. In the Milwaukee area, Jesse Rodriguez, Republican from Oak Creek, she's retiring. Hers is the second toughest seat to defend for Republicans. Then you go over to kind of southwestern Wisconsin, Todd Novak at Dodgeville. His is the third toughest seat probably to defend for Republicans, just based on top of the ticket numbers. Then you go to Ben Franklin up in the Green Bay area. He's another one within a Trump-held seat. Then Bob Donovan back in southeastern Wisconsin again. Now, Donovan won by a comfortable margin, at least in terms of Wisconsin swing seats go, in 2024. He's targeted again this year. Those are your 5 that are kind of the top ones to watch for Republican-held seats. Then you have one Steve Doyle, an Onalaska-only Democrat, has a seat that was won by Donald Trump in 2024. He's the only real big defend for Democrats. Then you have some reach seats. They're ones that maybe in the right environment you could win them for Democrats, but it'd be tough. Pat Schneider up in the Wausau area, Shannon Zimmerman over in River Falls area, and then Clint Moses in Menominee. So that's really your map. There aren't many other opportunities for Democrats because, the way the map was drawn, there are a limited number of seats where they can be competitive beyond the true blue ones. But that's your ball game in the Assembly. The question kind of becomes, is 50 going to be enough? And it's for either side, because you go dig a little deeper, there are 4 primaries for Democrats in the Assembly, all in the Milwaukee area, and the underscore splits in the party. For example, Russell Goodwin, he's a freshman lawmaker. He's being challenged by a community advocate. Ryan Clancy, a Democrat in the Milwaukee area. He's being challenged by a former Madison alderwoman who now lives in Milwaukee and runs a home store. Their reasons for those primaries are kind of simple. Ryan Clancy is part of a Democratic Socialist caucus, and there are some people who don't care for how he operates or how he works with others, and he's being challenged again like he was 2 years ago, in part because of that, some of his views on things like the Palestine-Israel conflict. Russell Goodwin, he voted for a bill authored by Republicans on transgender athletes. Ryan Clancy is endorsing Russell's opponent, and it says because of that vote that he thinks Russell is too conservative, essentially. So then you have Sylvia Ortiz Velez, who left the caucus in September after she was accused by colleagues of threatening to shoot them. She's had a falling out with her colleagues. She's being challenged in her primary. And then Priscilla Prado, who was the subject of Sylvia Ortiz Velez's ire at one point in this whole kind of thing this past fall, she's being challenged by somebody that seems being kind of like a a surrogate for Sylvia. So there's some real intra-party problems there that is, going to affect, like, even if you get to 50 votes, it might not be enough to govern because you have these rifts within the party about how things should go.
Interesting. Okay, and it's only the second election under Wisconsin's new legislative maps. Is there anything else that you're watching for, with these new maps, with new candidates? I mean, you've said before that it really comes down to the candidates, their messaging, how they can fundraise, all those kinds of things. But yeah, just with these new maps, anything you're looking at?
Just the environment, because the opportunities are there, but you need the right environment. And look, Donald Trump is not very popular right now. In the polling that we see, it is mid-June, right? So there's still some time, but gas is still about $4 a gallon. There's still things going on over in the Middle East. If prices this past week, we saw new reports of inflation going up. Donald Trump promised no new wars, and that prices would go down. Not that they would moderate how much they went up, but they would go down. People aren't seeing that. So long as his numbers aren't very good and people are concerned about the economy, it's not good for Republicans. Now, it doesn't mean they can't win. It just makes it tougher to win. So really, I'm watching the president's numbers. If you go back to 2018, another midterm election, the last Marquette poll before the November election, I think among registered voters, Trump's job approval was like 47, but among likely voters is 45. So somewhere in that neck of the woods. He was in the low 40s in the Marquette poll with registered voters in March. Now, we know Democrats are more motivated than Republicans are right now as we speak. So that likely voter model, he's probably even lower than that. That's not good for Republicans. But it's still, again, mid-June, there's time for things to turn around and get better. The question is, do people feel better by like October when they start casting ballots 2 weeks out from the election, or do they still feel the stress and strain of this economy and feel like things aren't going the way they were promised they would go under Donald Trump?
And Pierre actually did some focus groups with swing voters. These are people who voted for Biden in 2020 and Trump in 2024. One thing that unified a lot of them was fear about the effects of AI on jobs and on humanity as a whole. They're looking for leaders who can protect them. The Wisconsin legislature has winded down for the campaign season, but what are you hearing from state politicians on this front? Anything?
Not right now. They tried to pass a data center bill, didn't get bipartisan support and died. I think it passed the Assembly possibly, not the Senate. But you're seeing signs of the AI fears in campaigns. Francesca Hong, a state representative from Madison, is running for governor. She put out a policy on AI last week. You've seen new ads from Tom Tiffany, Republican running for governor, talking about stopping big data from bulldozing our farmland. Now, we have data centers coming to Wisconsin. They're in the process of being built, and I'm not sure they could stop that, who the next governor is, but they're trying to capture that kind of populist angst about what these things mean and what they might do for costs for you and I when we pay our energy bill, because there are promises being made that these centers will cover the cost of generation and transmission for energy. But people aren't sure they believe that. You can just tell it in the polls. They're somewhat nervous about data centers, and AI is a real palpable fear about what it means for their jobs. So yeah, whoever can capture that best might have an interesting issue to use with voters this fall, because there's definitely some interest in that from the people you talk to.
All right. Thanks so much for this analysis, JR. And as always, thanks for joining me on Capital Notes.
Anytime.
That was J.R. Ross, editor of WisPolitics.com, speaking with me, WUWM's Maayan Silver. Listen for our segments every other Monday with an extended segment on lake effect, and check out the Capital Notes podcast wherever you get your podcasts.